evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Ridgecrest City Council. Thank you to everyone here. We love having crowds like this. This is the type of community interaction we love to see. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. And if I can begin with our roll call.
Mayor Bruin.
Here.
Mr. Blades.
Present.
Mr. Rajaratnam.
Present.
Mr. Heyman.
Present.
Mr. Gorman.
Here.
5 present. We have a quorum.
Okay, your first item is our approval of our agenda. Is there any changes to the agenda as presented? Hearing none, do I have a motion for approval of the agenda as presented?
So moved.
I have a motion and second.
Second.
Roll call.
Mayor Bruin.
Aye.
Mr. Blades.
Aye.
Mr. Rajaratnam.
Aye.
Mr. Heyman.
Aye.
Mr. Gorman.
Aye.
5 ayes.
If I can ask us all to please stand, and Mr. Reed, if you would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Councilman Rajaratnam, if you'd lead us in the invocation.
Please join me in prayer if you would. Lord, thank you for giving us this day. Thank you for the city of Ridgecrest which you have given to us. Lord, thank you for the wonderful things that are happening in this town. Lord, I pray for our country. Lord, protect our country from all evil. Lord, pour out your love and your liberty. Lord, I pray for our city, the city council, city manager, and city staff who work relentlessly for the benefit of this community. Lord, pray for our police department whose lives are online from the time, Lord, they get out of their house and till the time they come back to the home, Lord. They are in danger, Lord. I ask you for your protection for them, Lord. Bless them abundantly for what they do for this town. Lord, bless each one of us here. Lord, as we discuss many issues which are important to this town, Lord, give us your wisdom, your direction, so that we make right decisions which are beneficial to this community. In Jesus' precious name I pray.
Amen.
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 Once again, thank you everyone for being here this evening. We have several presentations to begin our evening off with. So I'm going to ask, if I could ask the entire council to join me at the podium. We have a few awards to present to our staffs. So one of the fun parts about being a council member is that we get to recognize the people that do so much of the good service for this community. And tonight I get to recognize 2 members of our city staff as they've reached their 20th year of service. If I could ask Martin Dorrell to please come forward, and if I can ask Casey Parsons to please come forward. Cassie, sorry. I'm about to get myself hurt by a PD officer. That's called not being. So watch this. Well, I want to once again thank Mr. Dorrell and Ms. Parsons in order for your years of service. Thank you for everything that you've done to help protect our community. And in honor of your 20 years, on behalf of a grateful community, thank you. And if I could ask for you to take a moment to, if you'd like to say anything about your time or service, the podium is yours. Otherwise, we'll take a photo.
Let's take a photo.
That's what I kind of expected from a PD. People, a few words. Thank you for your service. Act like you like each other. And then we're going to invite all of our PD officers down here with them. Your hands are full, you're okay. You, there's no excuse, you're sitting over there.
Nice try, Jessica.
something else, I think, right?
Yeah.
Do you know what it is?
Skip.
It's a life-saving award. If you want to stay there, you
Oh,
can.
I don't know.
Justin's gonna do them? So it's up to you guys. For the life-saving.
Justin's going to do the life saving.
Yes.
Yeah. He's going to do the life saving, then we have transit. And Kyle's going to do transit. Yeah, we stay here. We have 3 of these. We're through number 1. And now if I could welcome Captain Dampier to the podium, he's got another award to present.
We actually got several awards right now. Sure most of the guys would agree we'd rather just do the photograph, but instead I'm going to say a little bit about what's going on. So Officer Garibay, please come on up. So on September 25th of 2022, Officer Garibay was dispatched to a residence on South Mayo Street regarding a daughter reporting that her dad was missing. A second call came in that said the dad was now suicidal. Officer Garibay arrived and located the subject down at the front door, bleeding from self-inflicted knife wounds to his wrists. One wound was really deep and bleeding profusely. Officer Garibay quickly applied a tourniquet on the upper arm to stop the bleeding. Liberty Ambulance and KCFD arrived and provided further medical aid. Ultimately, the subject did survive, and it was directly as a result of Officer Garibay's quick and decisive actions. So, thank you, Garibay.
Well, you have multiples.
Yeah, we got lots.
So why don't you do all of them, then we'll bring them all
All right.
together.
No, you're going to be coming back up in just a minute.
Just chill.
Yeah. Officer Rinaldi, your hands aren't full now. Officer Beard? There you go. Look. Same month, September of 2022, Officer Beard and Officer Rinaldi were dispatched to a residence on South Farragut Street. This time as a report of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. When the officers arrived on scene, they found the victim was suffering from a single gunshot wound to the right leg. The victim reported that he had placed a makeshift tourniquet on his leg. However, he was still suffering from extreme blood loss and was getting dizzy. Officers located the victim in the closet and was told the victim was trying to holster the firearm, but had accidentally discharged it. Officer Beard and Officer Rinaldi applied a tourniquet to stop the blood loss and applied direct pressure to the wound. First aid was continued by the officers until EMS arrived. Again, these officers saved a life this day, and directly as a result of their decisive and quick actions. Thank you, Officer Beard. Thank you, Officer Rinaldi. All right, another one for Officer Beard. This was a tragic fall season that ultimately turned okay because several lives were saved. So now in October, Officer Beard was dispatched for a welfare check near the Desert Empire Fairgrounds at the RV park. The subject being requested the welfare check on had not been heard from or seen from neighbors in about a week. Officer Beard evaluated the building but could not see anyone inside, but they did find the trailer to be unlocked. They called out for the subject, concerned he might be in distress, and eventually found the subject lying on the floor and non-responsive. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, this place was a mess, right? Yes. Yeah, I mean, they had to do some major construction just to get to this victim. So they created a pathway, allowed EMS to get in there and conduct first aid, and he was ultimately flown to the hospital for critical care due to the urgency of his condition. If not for Officer Beard's due diligence in getting in that residence and getting a pathway to the victim, the subject would have died. But to this day, he's still alive. Thank you, Josh. No, you got more. All right, now we're in December. Okay. So this involves Officer Beard and Officer Garibay. So on December 2nd of 2022, we received a 911 call for an infant not breathing. Officer Garibay, and actually, where's Pietrangelo? Where's he at? That's it. It's that plain clothes, you know. Trying to hide there in the back on me, huh? So Officer Garibay and Detective Daniel Pietrangelo responded to the scene and found a 3-month-old infant in severe respiratory distress. The child was struggling to breathe on his own and his pulse was sporadic and faint. The two officers quickly realized that waiting for the paramedics to respond would cost valuable time that child did not have. Detective Pietrangelo and Officer Garibay picked up the child and loaded him into a patrol vehicle and rushed him to the emergency room. Detective Pietrangelo held the child as Officer Garibay drove him to the hospital. Once they arrived, the doctors and nurses provided medical care to the child and were able to get him stabilized. Medical staff advised us that if it was not for these officers' quick and decisive actions and their life-saving efforts, this child would not have survived this medical emergency. Officer Garibay and Detective Pietrangelo are to be commended for ensuring the safety of this child, which saved his life. Now pictures.
Now pictures. So I happened to turn my head and look to the left, and I happen to know the Beecrofts, and is that your buddy? I would like to first see if I can ask for the family to come up and to share with the officers the photo first, if they're interested, and then we'll take one with council. I think that anytime you've saved a child, I think that that's just an incredible.
Because he's huge now.
So if I can invite the family up and what's the boy's name? Elijah. Come on over here.
Quit pinching him.
Almost done, buddy.
And then if I could ask all the officers who help save lives in this community to join us in the council for one more photo. I'm the cruise director. Come, people come. Cap, that means you too. Once again, thank you for all your help. Nope, got one more. We're returning to our line spacing.
I'll give it just a moment as some folks file out.
That's a tricky one, but.
Just as
Yeah, that's wrong. Yeah. It's usually how it goes. All right, so it's my honor to introduce a proclamation by the City of Ridgecrest honoring the National Transit Driver Appreciation Day. And it is hard to follow that act, of course, but that does not mean you guys aren't genuinely and deeply appreciated. I hope you know that. So, whereas transit operators manage to keep a schedule, check fares, give directions, announce and remember stops, and whereas they safely maneuver public transit vehicles through unpredictable traffic and adverse weather conditions, and whereas transit operators transport people to various places that include work sites, schools, shopping, and leisure activities, providing citizens from all walks of life with personal mobility and freedom, and whereas the health, safety, and comfort of many people in the community greatly depends on their ability to rely upon the transportation services provided by our transit operators. And whereas the efficiency and effectiveness of these qualified and skilled professionals contribute to the quality of life that residents and visitors alike enjoy and rely upon. And whereas transit operators don't have an easy job, they just make it look that way. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Ridgecrest City Council that we recognize and extend appreciation to our dedicated and skilled transit operators, and hereby proclaim March 18th, 2023 as Transit Driver Appreciation Day. Proclaim this 15th day of March 2023 by Mayor Eric Bruin, myself, Mr. Roger Rotnam, Mr. Scott Heyman, and Mr. Skip Gorman. And if you guys would you also come up for a photo?
Yes, absolutely.
Do you have anything to say?
Yeah. I'd just like to take a moment and to say thank you to Justin, to Vicky, to Daniel, to Dylan, to Sergio, and to John, the workers who make up our transit staff. And I just wanted to take a moment to thank them individually. And now I'll let John come up.
Like you spoke about all walks of life, yesterday we had the Montessori school, and Sergio had wheels on the bus, so they're singing, and I took the do, re, mi, the sound of music. We sang, taught them C major chord, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then I said, what street are we on? We did that kind of stuff, so they really all thanked me. The teachers are like, nice. So we get that once in a while. That's my favorite when we get the field trips, the first graders, and, so thank you.
Thank you.
And John, my daughter was on that bus,
Oh, cool.
and she had a blast.
Did she? Okay, cool.
That's cool.
That's cool.
And the wheels on the bus go.
Yeah.
She likes to sing.
Thank you, guys.
I did, I was just singing it.
Is there some of that water back there?
Whoever put that lone water back there for me, thank you.
I'll grab it for you.
Oh, thank you, Kyle.
Well, we always say one of the best qualities of this community is always the people that serve it. And I can't say enough for our PD officers. And you talk about inspiration when they can see a child that they're holding, that they saved that life. That's an incredible moment. And thank you to them. Thank you to our transit. And thank you to everyone who continues to serve our community. We greatly appreciate you. Our next presentation is our annual comprehensive financial report. This is the exciting stuff of the night. For those of you who love looking at numbers, this is your Monopoly moment. So I would like to welcome Ms. Frise. Had to do it. And we'll go ahead and get our ACFR.
Good evening, Council. Tonight we have our independent auditor. Is this on? We have our independent auditor, Coley Delaney, on the line. And he's going to go over a brief presentation about our fiscal year 2022 annual comprehensive financial report. So Coley, I'll turn it over to you at this time.
Yep.
Thanks, Sherry.
If you don't mind, Colby, could I interrupt you for just a moment?
Yeah, sure.
So, Sheree, could you tell the public real quick what this, just in general, real quick, what this report is? Because I think we all know what it is. We look at it constantly. It's my reference. It's actually sitting in my truck right now. It should be with me in here, but it should. But could you tell the public what it is? Because I think it's important.
Sure. It's a high-level look at our financials. It's an overview. It is done to the guidance of the GASB rules and accounting rules. And Coley's presentation is going to go over a little bit more. So, but basically, it's just a high-level look at our financials.
Awesome. Thanks. All right. Sorry to interrupt, Colby.
Yeah, no problem. Let me make sure I can share a screen here. Hang on one second. Sorry. Technical difficulties here for a sec. There. All right. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so again, my name's Coley Delaney. I'm a partner with the Poon Group, and we performed the city's financial audit for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2022. As Sheree mentioned, basically the financial statement that the city issues is it's called an ACFR for short, but it's short for the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. And I point out the fact that the C does say comprehensive. So this basically the city does go kind of above and beyond the bare minimum reporting requirements and does include additional information in this report to make it qualified to be considered an ACFR. So that additional information is in the introductory and statistical sections. There's also additional budget to actual information included in there as well. So it really does give you a full look at the city's financial position. It shows the governmental activities, the business type activities, and also each fund of the city. So with that, my presentation, I'll try to keep it short, but I'm going to do some required communications by auditing standards. I'll go over audit responsibilities, look at a brief overview of the financial statement, government-wide and general fund. And then we'll look at some financial indicators and key pension and OPEB information, and then I'll share the audit results with you. So again, these required communications by auditing standards. So regarding independence, our firm and individuals who worked on the engagement complied with all relevant requirements regarding independence. The city disclosed their significant accounting policies in Note 1 to the financial statements. This year, the city implemented a pretty major GASB statement for leases, which resulted in a recognition of $900,000 in leases receivable and related deferred inflows of resources. There were other GASBs that were due to be implemented this year, but none had a significant effect on the city's financial reporting. As far as significant estimates used in the financial statements, fair value on investments, depreciation on capital assets, and then the net pension liability and OPEB or other post-employment benefit liability use actuarial assumptions to come up with the numbers that you see on the financial statement. The disclosures we'd like to point out for you to take a look at if you haven't already read the whole thing cover to cover. Again, Note 1, summary of significant accounting policies. Note 4 is a new note this year for GASB 87 implementation and covers the leases receivable for the city. Note 11 and 12 cover your pension and OPEB plans. And then Note 13 is some other required disclosures. And then Note 14 is classification of fund balances, so you can see how the governmental funds fund balance classifications are broken out into what special projects the city has assigned fund balance for, what they've committed fund balance for, et cetera. There were no uncorrected or corrected or uncorrected misstatements reported. And then there were no consultations with other accountants regarding auditing or regarding our audit. We encountered no significant difficulties in dealing with management, and we did not have any disagreements with management in terms of accounting treatments or audit procedures performed. So for audit responsibilities, for management's responsibilities, management's responsible for the financial statements. They're responsible for presenting the financial statements in accordance with U.S. GAAP, adopting sound accounting policies, establishing and maintaining internal controls over both financial reporting and compliance. And for management is also responsible for providing the auditors with evidence supporting the amounts and disclosures in the financial statements. And last but not least, management is also responsible for preventing and detecting fraud. As the auditors, our responsibilities in accordance with auditing standards is to form and express an opinion about whether the financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects in accordance with U.S. GAAP. To do that, we plan and perform the audit to obtain reasonable but not absolute assurance about whether the financial statements are free from material misstatements. And we do consider internal control over financial reporting, but those considerations are for the purpose of determining our audit procedures and assessing risk, and not to provide any assurance on those internal controls. So here we have the government-wide statement. So this is the city as a whole. So this represents the governmental activities, which includes the general fund, and then the business type activities. So in this case, you can see this year that so we do assets plus deferred outflows of resources minus liabilities and minus deferred inflows of resources leaves us with our net position. So we can see that the total net position for the city the total assets for the city as a whole, 158 million. Total liabilities, 28 million. And then when we look into the net position, net investment in capital assets, that is basically total capital assets on your balance sheet minus any debt issued to build those things, which is there's no debt. So the net investment in capital assets is basically based just off your depreciated capital assets that you have. There is $7.8 million restricted in the governmental activities, and $5.9 million of that is restricted for capital projects, and the remaining is restricted for special projects or other purposes. And these restrictions are put in place by third parties that provide funds or enabling legislation. So this here is a condensed statement of activities, essentially the income statement. Again, shows governmental activities and business type activities. So this year, we'll point out, so we have expenses written here and as a negative on this schedule. So you'll see that governmental activities expenses were 8.4 million in the correct direction, but the business type activities had negative expenses actually this year, and that's due to essentially this year, because of CalPERS investment returns that they realized in 2021, which actually hit the city's books in 2022, the city actually had pension income this year. So, and when we record that, it actually shows up as essentially a negative expense. So that's what threw the business type activities expenses into the basically into an income state. Taxes here include property, sales tax, TOT, et cetera. There was a transfer from business type activities to governmental activities of $140,000. That was for debt service. And then change in net position, 16 million positive for governmental activities, 8 million for business type activities, 25 million total. So this is the general fund condensed balance sheets, again showing this is showing 22 against 2021. Current year assets consist mainly of 16 million in cash and investments. The main liability is advances from other funds. The deferred inflows of resources, this is a new piece that we're seeing in the general fund this year, is related to GASB 87 leases implementation. So that's a new piece. Non-spendable fund balance is the amount due from fiduciary funds. And again, restricted fund balance, similar to restricted net position, restricted by third parties. mainly consists of restrictions for Prop 172 funds. The assigned fund balance of 7.2 million is for Measure L funds. And the remaining fund balance is kind of the residual catch-all is unassigned at 9.4 million this year. And you can see that unassigned fund balance has gone up by 4 million versus last year. So that's a good sign. Sticking with the general fund here, this is the income statement. Revenues, 20 million this year against expenditures of 11.7. So revenues over expenditures of almost $9 million. There were transfers out of the general fund into the main transfers out of the were to the city debt service fund for $1 million and the state gas tax fund for 1.2 million. And positive change in fund balance, 5.1 million this year versus 4.6 last year. So now I'll just go over some quick financial indicators and then key pension and OPEB information. So this slide here, this is for the city's governmental activities. So this would be coming from the government-wide statement. And this is a ratio of net cost of services to tax revenues. So the net cost of services is calculated as charges for services and operating and capital grants minus expenses. Now, for a governmental agency, that typically will throw the net cost of services it'll be essentially negative every year. So 2021 saw total governmental activities expenditures of 19 million versus only 8.4 million in 2022. Again, this change was due to the CalPERS investment returns that I previously mentioned. But essentially, a ratio here below 100% is good. That means that the city's tax revenues are sufficient to cover the net cost of providing services without dipping into net position or relying on investment earnings or miscellaneous revenues. So I will point out this ratio change from last year to this year just shows incredible improvement. But we are expecting this ratio to kind of slide back into what it's normally been next year because whereas CalPERS had really good investment returns in 2021, they had really bad returns in 2022. And so those will hit the financials next year. And so you probably see, the results will be kind of more along the line of kind of how they've been in the past. This is general fund unassigned fund balance to annual expenditures. As I mentioned earlier, unassigned fund balance is the residual fund balance, but this is the essentially usable fund balance. It doesn't have any basically kind of no strings attached to it. And so the ratio of unassigned fund balance to annual expenditures this year has jumped from 46% to 80%. So quite healthy. And the unassigned fund balance in the general fund has gone from 3.2 million in 2020 to 5.4 million last year to 9.4 million in 2022. So trending upwards. So that's good. This slide is just to kind of point out that the sensitivity I mentioned earlier that the city's net pension liability, or in this case for this year is actually an asset, is calculated using actuarial assumptions. And one of the main assumptions that goes into the calculation is the selection of the discount rate. So CalPERS has used 7.15% as the discount rate. And so you can see in the gray highlighted area, those are the city's actual numbers. So again, the city did report this year for the first time a net pension asset of 9.2 million. What this is showing is that if CalPERS were to adjust the discount rate positive 1% or up 1% or down 1%, what would that swing in your liability do? So in this case, if they went down to 6.15%, you'd actually have a net pension liability of $720,000. And if it went to 8.15%, that net pension asset that you have right now, that the city has right now, would actually go up to $17.4 million. So down below, we're seeing like the not really huge changes in the proportionate share, like what we call like this is essentially like the funded percentage. So they have gone up again. That's why they're over 100%. That means you have an asset. But again, we're expecting those to come back down into the liability side next year. Similar, same thing. This is basically the same as the previous slide, but this is for the other post-employment benefits. That was measured at 6.75% this year, and as you can see, kind of not as big of swings that you'll realize in the OPEB liability if the discount rate were changed plus or minus 1%. The plan is 80% funded, which is a good funding percentage from what we've seen across many of our clients. So, audit results. We issued unmodified opinions to all opinion units. That means that the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects. Accounting policies have been consistently applied, estimates used are reasonable, and the disclosures are properly reflected in the financial statements. For other results, we had no disagreements with management, and we reported no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal control over financial reporting or compliance, and no accounting issues were noted, and no inappropriate activities were noted. With that concludes my presentation on the 2022 city financial statements.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments, Sheree?
I don't have any.
Okay. Are there any questions from council? No? Okay. Thank you, sir. I don't believe there's any questions other than to say thank you for another fantastic report. Oh, you have a question?
Awesome, thank you.
I said, any questions from council? Oh, sorry. Councilman Rajani. No, go right ahead.
My colleague, this is Solomon. So some of my questions might be silly, but I'm trying to understand, so please bear with me, okay? So when you say management's discussion and analysis, what does that mean? So is that something you talk to city and then you put forth this, or what does that mean?
No, so this management discussion and analysis, or we refer to it as the MD&A, is a required GASB, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, considers that required supplementary information to be included with the financial statement. And so what that is, it's unaudited. Our responsibility for that is to kind of just read through it and make sure that it makes sense and that the numbers do are the ones that are actually reflected in the financial statements. But it is unaudited, and that basically is, again, the M is in the MD&A is management. So management does write that portion of the document, and that's where they basically, explain. Typically, it's a year-over-year document. So basically, explaining significant changes, significant things that happened in the city from the last year, talks about the city's major funds and what happened with those that year. Also discusses capital assets, long-term debt, and things like that, and as well as an economic outlook for the upcoming year. But that is created by management.
Okay, thank you. So is this all, finalized, or can we make some changes in this if there are any mistakes?
This is final. We did issue let me see the report date on this. We went final with this at the end of January. So it is a final document, and it has been reviewed extensively. However, I won't say that it's 100% error-free, but we haven't noted any. But this is considered a final document, yes.
Okay. I do find some mistakes, so that's why I'm asking. These are minor ones, though, so we can't change those things, right?
No, but what we can do is I can get those mistakes from you because that's a document that I put together every year. So if you want to just send me those
Okay.
mistakes, then I can correct them for next year.
Okay. Next question is about ARPA. So where do we show that money in our financial statement? Because we got half of that in July 2021, so it should be in the financial year 2021-22.
Yeah, so there's a, on the governmental funds balance sheet, if you were to, I don't know if you have a report in front of you, but starting
Can
on page.
you guide me to the page number or?
Yeah, so on page 28, there is, it was actually a new fund, a new special revenue fund for the city, created this year, basically, obviously to track ARPA proceeds and expenditures. We did add it as a, it was considered a major fund of the city, so it's included with on the governmental funds balance sheet on page 28, and then on the governmental funds income statement on page 32.
So on page 28, where do I see that? Do you see that?
So it's
Okay.
American Rescue Plan Act, Special Revenue Fund.
But I think we should have received around 3 million something, right?
So what we're doing with that is we're placing it in what can be considered a holding fund until we're actually ready to spend those. Because otherwise what you would see is you would see a lot of revenue and no expenses for the first year.
Okay.
And then you'd see expenses with no revenue. So that's what we're doing with that.
Sure. that
So
makes
that's
sense.
the residual after whatever we spent during that fiscal year.
Whatever. Right?
Yeah, at the end of June.
Yeah.
We got more in July.
Okay. So, sorry, please bear with me. So can you talk a little bit about 2018 PERS certificate of participation? That is
The-
pension liability, right?
The bonds, right?
Yeah, on page 76.
Yeah, so those bonds were, they're called the 2018 PERS Certificates of Participation, or COPs. Those are actually issued in calendar year 2018, but in fiscal year 2019. And essentially, basically the proceeds of those bonds that were paid to CalPERS as additional UAL contributions. And so that has led greatly to the fact that the city, based on CalPERS investment returns last year, because you had that money in CalPERS, the city recognized additional investment income from CalPERS this year. And that's why, like, were it not for these bonds and sending the proceeds to CalPERS, you probably would not have a net pension asset at June 30, 2022.
Okay. So in layman terms, so what we are contributing for pension fund is less than what the pension is paid. Is that right?
Well, essentially, I think the city was, again, I mentioned the discount rate that CalPERS uses of 7.15%. And so the city took advantage of lower interest rates that were offered to through the bond market, and are basically by paying the interest rates on the bonds, they're actually saving money on interest charges that they would have incurred from CalPERS.
Okay, last question. 2018 tax allocation refunding bonds. Can you talk a little bit on that? So
Yeah,
that
so-
doesn't show on the balance sheet, right? If I'm not mistaken.
So these, so you're referring to, these bonds are held by the successor agency to the redevelopment agency. So these are not, as we would consider, city liabilities. They belong to, like the city has a fiduciary responsibility to pay off the remainder of the RDA's debt, but that does come from successor agency tax funding. So essentially, these were, again, you see that the same year as the CalPERS, the pension COPs, the certificates of participation, those bonds were both issued in the 2018 timeframe. And so basically what this was just a refunding of higher interest rate debt that the successor agency had at the time. And so if you want to see where these are included on the financial statements, they're in what's called the statement of fiduciary net position, which was not part of the governmental activities or the business type activities, and you would see these bonds show up on the balance sheet on page 49.
Page 29?
Page 49.
So bonds payable. Okay, it's 21. I thought that is CalPERS, no?
Not these ones. No, these are tax allocation and refunding bonds that were issued by the formerly the redevelopment agency. Now the city is acting as the successor agency to the redevelopment agency, and they, in that capacity, they issued refunding bonds to pay off some of their older, higher interest rate bonds for these ones to have debt service savings.
Sherry, are these the ones that are linked to the property taxes? 5% property tax, and then we contribute, and then we ask for some disbursement. How are we repaying this? We make some request from Department of Finance, I think, right?
Yeah, from the ROPS, the Recognized Obligation Payment Schedule.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the basic reason why we did this was for the additional residual allocation that would come to the city in the way of a general fund revenue. That was the purpose for it.
Okay.
Was there was a lot of money that the sooner we pay off the bonds, the sooner we can get the tax allocation bonds paid off, then we can get our full increment of property tax. But in the meantime, because we lowered that interest rate considerably on the bonds that had previously been issued, we now see, as well as the county and all the other stakeholders, see a larger portion of that residual coming back to us in additional funding. And that was the reason for that.
So are these the ones, Ron, that are supposed to be paid off by 2037, something like that?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. That's all, Colby. Thank you very much for your clarifications.
Problem?
No problem. Thank you, sir. Any other questions from council? Seeing none? Mr. Delaney, thank you for your time. Sheree, thank you for your time. Thank you for continued excellence in our financial records. Anybody who's interested in seeing the comprehensive financial report, it is available online. And I encourage you, if you ever need some light reading to put you to sleep, this will do the trick. But there's so much in here that tells you about how much we've improved the financial condition of the city. It's a fun read. Next item on our agenda is our public comment section. Public comment of items not on the agenda. Persons wishing to address the council on matters that are within the council's jurisdiction and do not already appear on the agenda may do so at this time. Council will not respond to any public comments, but may provide direction to staff to collect information. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the City Council may not act on any item that does not appear on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 5 minutes, and the public comment section of the agenda is limited to a total of 1 hour. Each speaker is asked to provide his or her name, and I will begin with any public comment from the floor. Is there any public comment from the floor?
Hi, my name is Mike Sunot, and I would like to refer people listening to the Roadrunner395.com website. There's two top posts, letter to Sheriff Donnie Youngblood and the letter to Cal State Bakersfield Political Science Department. I'll have some more information on the Cal State Bakersfield Political Science Department this morning or this evening. And Sheriff Youngblood is aware of the letter, and I'm developing a strategy that I think might be interesting, but I'll tell you about that next time. I've made 2 trips over to Bakersfield in the last 2 meetings with Kern County Board of Supervisors, making some contacts over there. And I'm going to talk about 4 things if I can get through this really quickly. I got a minute for each. And I feel a sense of urgency to share this information with you. My background is money and global macro politics. I've been following this stuff since I was 5 years old. There's things happening now. It's time to talk about them. First is the government crimes category. Last month, Tucker Carlson interviewed someone who would know what's in the JFK files that have been kept secret for 60 years. This unnamed source said he believed the CIA was involved in Kennedy's murder. That wasn't a surprise. What was truly shocking is that Carlson's source said the following: "We live in a country that isn't what we thought it is. It's all fake." It's why many of us knew early on that the pandemic, that everything our government and the medical pharmaceutical industry told us was a lie. You've all been lied to for 60 years as well, since 1939. Number 2, we'll file this under the greatest financial crisis of all time. The late comedian George Carlin once said, "It's a big club, and you ain't in it." I'll mention a couple of keywords first. Silicon Valley Bank, Gavin Newsom, FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried, inflation, rising interest rates, high leverage ratios, time duration mismatch, insider trading, influence peddling, vulture capitalism, insolvency, the end of the petrodollar, bank bailouts, depositor bailouts, and central bank digital currencies. Can you believe this? During a conference call about the Silicon Valley Bank bailout yesterday, Senator Mark Kelly, Democrat from Arizona, asked representatives from the Federal Reserve, Treasury Department, and the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation if they had a way to censor information on social media to prevent a run on the banks, according to Republican members of the House who were on the call. It should come as no surprise that the leftist senator from Arizona would suggest censoring financial commentators, or anybody else for that matter, but that's where we are today. And here comes Peter Schiff telling us why Senator Kelly wants to censor information on social media to prevent a run on the banks. Okay, I'm going to skip really fast. You'll have to get that quote off me later. I'll cover, because this is going to be an ongoing theme. We're going to file this under what is global fascist Nazism. That's really a repulsive thing to talk about. Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco recently said that California's political ideology is 100% responsible for California's descent into lawlessness. I'm going to give you 3 reference sources. First is, and you can make a note later, or I'll put it up on the website, it's already on the John F. Kennedy 7 Days That Changed the Course in History post that I wrote over a year ago. From JFK to 9/11, everything is a rich man's trick. It's a 3-hour-long video. Next, I brought the book that's just hot off the presses called The Great Reset by Michael Rechtenwald. He's authored 12 books. He's a NYU former NYU professor. I have actually communicated with him. I'll be talking about this book a lot, The Great Reset and the Struggle for Liberty. And I didn't get to number 4, but I'll just mention it, The Pandemic of the Unvaxxed. Remember, the pandemic of the unvaxxed. We'll get to that later. There's going to be a time, there's going to be time when we need to have a reckoning on that. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. I saw it flash, I didn't see it end. Yeah, I didn't get it. It was close. Okay, no, we were close. Let him finish. Okay, is there any other public comment from the floor? Seeing none, is there any public comment on the phones? I'll give it a second just to see if there's anybody who's going to call in. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move forward. Thank you very much. Thank you for the comments. Next on our agenda is our council announcements and direction. We'll go ahead and start with Mr. Gorman. You have any council announcements?
No.
Okay. Doc?
None.
Mine is going to be just a reminder. If you have not heard, the City of Ridgecrest, as well as some of our guests here from Troop 848 and Pack 341 of our local Boy Scouts are doing a community cleanup this Saturday from 9 a.m. until 12 p.m. In the beginning, staging at the Zinn Bowl parking lot, and we'll be cleaning the I call them wind-battered areas of fence line that has collected around those areas. And we would invite anybody who's interested in spending a few minutes picking up some trash and maintaining our beautiful community to join us. Solomon?
Just want to say good job on the financial report, Sherry. Thank you.
Kyle, nothing?
Nothing.
Okay. Next item is our consent calendar. We have 2 items on our consent calendar this evening. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered to be routine and enacted by one motion unless pulled by a council member or a member of the public. Our first item is proposed action to approve the draft minutes of the Ridgecrest City Council meeting, regular meeting dated March 1st, 2023. And the second is proclamations for the month of March. I need to go look at, I tried to go off script and I screwed myself up, Rika. I really did. Do any members of the council wish to have an item pulled?
No.
Does any member of the public wish to have an item pulled? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented?
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Roll call.
Mayor Bruin,
Aye.
Mr. Blades,
Aye.
Mr. Rajaratnam,
Aye.
Mr. Heyman,
Aye.
Mr. Gorman,
Aye.
5 ayes, motion carries.
See, I can't mix those pages up, and then I get myself in trouble. Item number 7 is our public hearing. We have a public hearing for this evening to approve a resolution of the City of Ridgecrest City Council to consider public comments and establish a finding for unmet needs that are reasonable to meet with the public transportation system for fiscal year 2023-2024. Mr. Smith will be running this one. I will go ahead and open the public hearing at 7 p.m. I just realized the clock's off.
We'll get that changed before the next meeting.
And we'll go ahead and begin with our staff report.
All right, so I just wanted to define a couple items real quick. The unmet needs hearing is part of the transit planning and financial process. We have to, look at if we have any unmet needs for next year and then correct them so that we can continue to receive the funding and be able to spend some of that funding on roads and streets. And then I wanted to go over the definitions of the term unmet transit needs. By Kern-Cog Resolution 90-04 defines unmet transit needs as follows. An unmet transit need exists if an individual of any age or physical condition is unable to transport himself or herself due to deficiencies in the existing transportation system. Excluded are 1, those requests for minor operational improvements, and 2, those improvements funded and scheduled for implementation in the following year. The term reasonable to meet is defined as A, operational feasibility. The requested improvement must be safe to operate and there must be adequate roadways for the vehicle. B, duplication of service. The proposed service shall not duplicate any other transit services. C, timing. The proposed service shall be in response to the existing rather than a future need, to an existing rather than a future need. And D, service must meet the legally required fare box ratio with fares close to fares of the similar service. So now that we've defined those terms, I think we're ready to see if we have any comments.
Thank you, sir. So we begin by, do we have any public comment in regards to the unmet needs of our community as it relates to transit? Public hearing. Yeah, so yeah, any public comments? Seeing none, are there any public comments on the phone?
Now, if I remember correctly, this is something that does get advertised, right? Beyond just, or is it just the posting?
It has to be published.
So it's published in the paper. We also put signs on buses, things of that nature.
Yep. I thought I remembered.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're probably.
Okay. Hearing no other comments, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And do I bring it back to council for comments or? Yeah, I can bring it back to council. Yeah, bring it back to council. Is there any council comments?
I do have a question. It's maybe a typo. So in the resolution,
Yep.
from the bottom, the third whereas, so March 2nd, 2022, what happened? I mean, did we start at that time or is that a typo?
It is a typo.
Oh, okay, so it should be March 15th, 2023? Okay. Thank you, sir.
Solomon, you are a master whiz at that.
Editor-in-chief.
I'm just gonna say master whiz.
Slow reaction again. It's on my newbie councilman bucket list to take a half a day and be a passenger on the bus system around here.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. We'll be happy to have you.
Yeah, John, he'll sing Wheels on the Bus to you.
Yeah, I want to sing.
He'll sing.
Take them down the worst roads in Richmond.
Any other council comments?
None.
Okay, do I have a motion for approval of the resolution as amended for the date in the fifth whereas?
Motion to approve with changes.
Second.
I have a motion and second, roll call.
Mayor Bruin,
Aye?
Mr. Blades,
Aye.
Mr. Rajabhatnan,
Aye.
Mr. Heyman,
Aye.
Mr. Gorman,
Aye.
5 ayes, motion carries.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Sorry. These nights are catching up.
Tough day.
Next is item number 8, discussion regarding the board of the Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority. Mr. Heyman, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so the Groundwater Authority did meet last Wednesday on March 8th, and I will go over the highlights and of that meeting. So I'll begin with, let's see here, we'll start. With item number 9, which was the approval of the Water Resources Development Act, WRDA 2024 amendment for project authorization. So basically, that entailed a request for Water Resources Development Act 2024 project authorization request. And so it's basically a language request through the WRDA. This is a request for authorization of the interconnection pipeline project pursuant to Section 219 of the Water Resources Development Act and includes proposed legislative language be inserted stating Indian Wells Valley Groundwater
Basin, $178 million for construction of water infrastructure, providing water supply to the Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority for an interconnection pipeline project in Kern County, California. And so the WRDA funding for the $178 million doesn't come from the WRDA, but if this is in the legislation and it is authorized, then funding would be provided by the Energy and Water Development Act. And so that was approved by the board. And moving on to item number 10. Item number 10.
I'm going to excuse myself for just a moment, but go ahead. Go ahead and proceed.
Item number 10, Stark Street Shallow Well Impact Mitigation Evaluation. So I think I made a comment last board meeting or last council meeting about we had shelved two of the items from that meeting to the current meeting that we had last week on shallow well mitigation impacts. So I'll start with Stark Street. So basically, it was the shallow well mitigation program and whether these wells qualified for application to the shallow well mitigation. The board approved the Stark Street well for an amount of approximately $31,000, which included the fair market value of the well, which I believe was approximately $12,000, and then an additional amount for deepening that well, so for a total of $31,000 and some change. And so we're happy to see, and hopefully they can get that well back up and running. It was interesting to note too, in discussions, there was a map that was provided, and it showed the, I guess you call it a sphere of influence or the water district boundaries, and Stark Street well, it was pretty much surrounded by the water district's supply areas. And so one individual brought up concern whether, that well could have been impacted, from pumping of, groundwater. But so the board did approve it. Item number 11 was the Heritage Village Shallow Well Impact Mitigation Evaluation and application for their well. It was denied. There was still approximately 140 feet of water, standing water, I believe, to the pump on that well. And so the board felt that based on the lifespan of the well and that there was still that depth of water available in the well that it didn't qualify for the shallow well mitigation. There was a recommendation by staff, and let me pull that up here. So staff recommendation, staff recommends the application of the HVMCA, which is the Heritage Village Shallow Well Impact Mitigation, be denied for funding. Staff further recommends that the Heritage Village and the Indian Wells Valley Water District evaluate full water supply service to the Heritage complex by the Indian Wells Valley Water District, including irrigation, that the Water District consider negotiating a credit to Heritage for its new well, and that the Water District assume ownership and control of the well. So, there was their recommendation that Heritage work out some type of an agreement between them, the two parties, to bring them under the control, I guess you could say, or services of the Water District. So that item was denied. Moving on to item number 12 was the authorize the Water Resource Manager to submit the 2022 Water Year Annual Report to the Department of Water Resources. And so that's the annual report that goes out. That was approved by the board and will be sent out. And item number 13 is authorize the Water Resource Manager to submit the water recycling feasibility study to the United States Bureau of Reclamation. And basically the Title 16 feasibility study pertains to, let me pull some notes here so I can. Basically, back in July of 22, the board had recommended to staff to perform a feasibility study. And because the Bureau of Reclamation requires a feasibility study to assess and determine whether or not you qualify for funding. So this was a continuation of that study that was requested back in 2022. And so it was approved by the board to submit that feasibility study. A couple highlights of that, the Water Infrastructure Improvements of the Nation Act of 2016, or what's identified as WIN, requires projects seeking Title 16 eligibility to conduct a feasibility study. With that, this study will include, it basically pertains to the water recycling revenues that we're looking to find funding for. And the alternatives based off that study will include basically three alternatives. One being tertiary landscape, or tertiary treatment and landscape irrigation, which is alternative one, tertiary treatment and surface spreading for alternative two, and tertiary and full advanced treatment and deep injection for alternative three. And the rest of it just gets a little, yeah, we'll skip that. So, okay. Anyway, so that was approved. Moving on to the rest of the meeting was basically the the Water Resources Manager's report, which is brief, and the General Manager's report, which I have nothing to report on that. And that concludes our meeting. So I'm open to any questions or comments from the council.
Thank you, sir. We'll go ahead and start with Mr. Gorman there. We'll go.
An easy question,
Yes.
Councilman Heyman. Because I have a shallow well, I'm particularly interested in the shallow well mitigation program as it goes along. 2 shallow wells were considered, and how deep is your stack of shallow well mitigation requests are there?
I would say it's a shallow stack at this point.
Yeah, there's only 2 so
Yeah,
far,
it's-
and they've been
it's just the
addressed.
2 wells.
Just 2. Is there an outreach? You send out word, hey, you guys, in your kern, perhaps. We have a shallow well mitigation program going here. We're reading your inputs. If you have problems, would like to hear about it. Is there an outreach that might be tailored to those demographics?
Well, it has been brought forward to the public in the past, and I think with the communication engagement process that's going on, that might be another area that they could continue to keep it out in the forefront of the well owners, to be knowledgeable of that, the program exists, and whether or not that they're, if they do have trouble with their wells too. And it was talked about before too, that in one of the board meetings, to shallow well owners to not wait until there's a catastrophic event, to be monitoring their wells, to, get with the county and have their wells, listed and have evaluations done so that they can be monitoring them and prevent a catastrophic failure, which, brings us to the similar situation where these wells were, where they had failed.
Sure, thank you.
Welcome.
I don't have any questions. Someone? Cal? Okay. Is there any public comment, any public questions? Seeing none from the floor? Seeing none from the floor, is there any on the phones? I'll give a few seconds for the phones. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and bring it back to council.
Yep, I'll just add an admin note.
Admin note.
That is just that we still see at this point, even after the extraction fee and the replenishment fees have been introduced to the public and will put upon all the customers, the water district customers, there's still a lot of questions about where those fees are going, what they're being spent on, why bills have fluctuated. Even recently, the water district changed their tier structure, and that's another change people are getting used to. So if this is the venue that you're watching, just please do get a hold of the water district. Their staff is pretty knowledgeable. They'll help you, they'll walk you through the bill and explain what's going on. If you have a question about any of the fees or anything that the GA is doing, either get a hold directly of Scott Heyman or call into the board meetings. The GA board staff is knowledgeable. Don't wonder what's going on. And social media is a good place to, it's a good place to read comments, but it's always not always the best place to go find knowledge. So I encourage you to reach out to these organizations. Over.
Thank you, sir. And thank you for your report, sir. Next item on our agenda is item number 9. Item number 9 is a resolution to accept the base bid as submitted by Elknor? Elknor? Am I saying it right? Elecnor? Elecnor Belco Electric Incorporated. Utilizes the budgeted highway safety improvement project funds of $819,020, which will be state reimbursed, and allocate general fund reserves of up to $226,246 for the remainder, and a 5% contingency, a maximum total of $1,045,266 for a project, and award a construction contract to Elknor Belco Electric Incorporated to construct the HSIP project in the amount of $785,600, and authorize the city manager, Ronald Strand, to execute the contract. Mr. Reed.
Good evening, council. So this is one of the last 2 projects we have to bring in front of you guys. We'll be going out to bid with our Crackville project here shortly. So this was 2020. We applied for the Highway Safety Improvement Program. We applied for 3 separate grants. Actually, we applied for 4, but we were awarded 3 to the tune of $819,000. That amount was in the budget. In the time from 2020 when we got awarded, 2021 when we got all the plans together, and now that we've bid it and it's gone out, obviously, we've seen inflation. With what we've done with all the other projects in Measure V, I spoke with City Manager Strand, and he recommended that we bring it to you guys and get it done, because both of us agree that every project that we've waited on, it ends up costing us more money in the long run. And as Solomon is aware, our signals are in dire need of some help. So the 3 projects that we're doing were combined into one. Staff did everything they could to try to mitigate costs for us. We didn't want to see there was a potential by bidding the 3 separately that we could have gotten 3 separate contractors, which means we would have paid 3 separate MOB fees. So in an effort to try to cut costs and keep it closer to what the grant was authorized for at the end of 2020, we elected to go this route. And with that, again, we'll say that we are asking for unallocated general fund reserve money to make up the difference for this project. And if you guys have any questions, I am available.
I would say that, just for the sake of the record, can you describe the 3 projects just one more time for the record?
Absolutely. So it's controller and interface upgrades for all of our signals along our China Lake corridor. So you've got the College Heights intersection, you've got Bowman intersection, you've got Raider, you have Upjohn, thank you. I don't know why I couldn't think of that one. Upjohn, you've got Church and California. So what this does is this puts new controllers and will give us a better ability to use our transportation software to better control and actually maybe utilize our synchronization system in a way that would better suit the public and not create more complaints and heartache than good. The second one was arterial flashing stop signs. The staff went out and got approval from Caltrans, from the county. So every intersection that is considered arterial will have the flashing stop signs that flash and pulse with the red lights to bring attention to the stop signs. So that includes intersections like Mahan and Las Flores, where half is on Las Flores, half is in the city. With that, though, since we got the grant, the city is the one that will ultimately be responsible for maintaining the stop sign. So we got an agreement with the county and basically said that we will assume the maintenance portion of those flashing stop signs. And the last one is crosswalk upgrades on the 2 crosswalks that are mid-block on Ridgecrest Boulevard, and the other one that is mid-block on Downs. Basically, it adds flashing beacons and indicators within the medians, so that way traffic is warned on both sides of the road on the direction when they're coming that somebody is utilizing the crosswalk. So those are the 3 projects.
And based on the assumptive approval of this council this evening, What is the timeline for implementation?
It's a 45-day working contract. Once we award, we've got 10 days to get contracts and all that stuff in order. Then by the time we get through the submittal process, I would say another 30 days. So in December, should be complete.
So in other words, we're gonna have good traffic lights south of Ridgecrest Boulevard and Carmageddon north of Ridgecrest Boulevard.
Correct.
Got it.
Correct. So this is what? I think you guys have awarded 5 roads projects now this year?
Yeah.
So, and
I'm
we
trying to
got
make
one more
light
to
of it
come.
because one of the things that we have to just keep reminding people is we are pushing projects forward to get the street work done. It is going to create moments of inconvenience, but these are all, I can't tell you how many people have mentioned Raider to me. I don't know what streetlight is on Solomon's radar, but I guarantee you, I've had Raider mentioned to me more times than I choose to care to discuss. And I know that anything that we're doing to increase public safety with either the flashing lights or improvements on the streets, so these are all necessary and good improvements for our community. I just want to make light of the fact that we'll have lots of good lights south of Ridgecrest Boulevard, and we'll have Carmageddon north of Ridgecrest Boulevard, but it'll all work out over time.
So one of the other things that just to kind of add to what you were saying is we're going to actually be doing a trial of the 2 different detection systems on the California and China Lake Boulevard intersection here. We've got 2 companies that we're talking to, so we're getting a demonstration. Well, they'll put all their new camera equipment on, and we'll try the camera system for a month. And then we're getting a demonstration of the new radar system as well, so we can figure out which one works best with our climate, our traffic, the type of cars we see. And I felt that California was a great intersection to do it because I've got correspondents that I can walk down the hall and go talk to and ask how it's working.
Got it.
So, and then once we get that, the first one that we'll implement on is Raider.
Because nobody's talked about Raider.
No, I haven't gotten any calls on that
No.
signal.
Exactly. Okay, we'll bring it back for council comments. We'll go ahead and start with Kyle this time. You're up first. Nothing? Solomon?
Mr. Reed, so this is the only bid we had?
It was the only bid we got, correct. We solicited 5 different contractors, and the majority of the contractors were either booked or did not feel it was a big enough project for them to come up to do.
Okay.
So it was put out on all the major job boards, on our website, plan rooms, everywhere.
And we are basing his credentials on what Wildan has endorsed?
Yeah, so Wildan has done, Mike named off about 6 of them that he could just think of off the top of his head that he's been involved with other cities. And he said they're a very capable contractor, they're quick, they do good work, and they should have no problems with this scope. So
I'm sure you are convinced with that, that's why you are recommending him.
I'm gonna be 100% honest with you. Mike, other than Quinn here, Mike is like my right hand. Whenever I have a question that I want to bounce an idea off, Mike is the guy from Wildan that I call. So I definitely solely trust his judgment.
Thank you.
Wait, if that's can I have a go back?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that answer too.
Of course you can
Doesn't
have
bother me. I meant to ask, I actually made a note here. With the HSIP grant being reimbursable, would you just explain, just real quick to the public, how much money is coming out of which fund?
So with this project, the Highway Safety Improvement Project, or Highway Safety Improvement Program has different levels of funding based on what your benefit cost ratio is and based on what type of work you are applying for. So this type of work, and I'm just going to use Class A to say you've got Class A, Class B, they have all different letters, right, is 100% fundable. So based on the estimate that was provided in 2020 for preliminary engineering, construction engineering, and for construction, all these projects were, quote, 100% funded. But with going through the design process, going back and forth, we did extensive research because we were actually thinking about adding to the project and changing the stop signs to the newer model stop signs that the actual white stop lights up, and when it sees a car, they flash red. But that would have added another 150 grand to this project. So we tried to stick with the ones we've already had and tried and true and had parts for. But all of that money that we asked for is funded. So preliminary engineering, CE, and the portion of construction that would have been covered, if our bid would have come back right, would have been covered. So the only amount that is coming from us on this is the 226,246. And that's provided we use all of our construction engineering budget. So best case scenario, Elecnor is quick. They get their work done really, really timely. We save 20% of our construction engineering budget. I don't use any of my contingency, and I use 60 grand less than what you see up there. So 200, about 200 grand, 200 of the 226 is my guess is what would come out of our general fund reserve.
Thanks, man.
I have nothing. Scott?
A comment. I'm not annoyed by street work. We have a slug of it, and we'll have more. There'll be an instant in time soon in the future when you don't pass through an intersection that's not under repair or improvement one way or another. I think it's great, sort of. I think it's great. It shows we're fully alive and growing, and things are getting better. It's easy to be annoyed. It's easy to be held up, and I just transcend it. You won't be doing too much, so don't let that hold you back.
I promise you I will not. I like to be busy, and I think so does City Manager Strand. So I promise you there will not be a waking moment that we are not thinking about other things we can do.
Okay, I'll bring it out to the public. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and ask if there's any public comment on the phone. Seeing none, I'll give it a moment for any call-ins. Seeing none, I'll go ahead and bring it back to council. Any other final council comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the resolution as presented.
Move to approve the resolution.
Second.
I have a motion and second. Roll call.
Mayor Bruin,
Aye.
Mr. Blades.
Aye.
Mr. Rajaratnam.
Aye.
Mr. Heyman,
Aye.
Mr. Gorman,
Aye.
5 ayes, motion carries.
Get back to work.
Yes, sir. Get her
Are
done.
you doing the next one too?
I am.
So
I'm the stepchild that gets to
now
fill out this
batting
one.
for Heather Spurlock. Number 10. Number 10 is introduction and first reading of an ordinance of the Ridgecrest City Council amending the Ridgecrest Municipal Code concerning the extension of tentative parcel maps and tentative tracts maps. Now batting in the place of Heather Spurlock, Mr. Travis Reed.
I was going to open it up and try to talk in a high-pitched voice,
Hi.
but so what this is here is this is housekeeping on aisle 5. The Subdivision Map Act was changed, which gave us more flexibility in offering extensions for subdivisions such as parcel maps and tract maps. As Kyle probably recalls, for his, I think it was a pretty short time lived on the Planning Commission,
I
right?
was on there for like 3 or 4 months.
3 or 4 months. So we have a lot of repetitive things where developers have to remember to come in every 12 months to ask for an extension on their map. The Subdivision Map Act, I can't remember if it was in 22 or 23 when they changed it, but we were reading it and caught it the other day, and I say we, and by we I mean Heather, caught that, hey, we can actually set this up now to where we can give them no longer than a 6-year term and they don't have to come back. Many of these maps take 18 to 24 months to just develop and get all your engineering plans approved before you could even put a bucket in the ground. So the original time was 12 months or 24 months that you could give them, and they had to come back and ask for 12-month extensions. So not only will this make the docket smaller for the Planning Commission to where they only have to hear the things that matter and don't do these mundane things, it gives us the ability to give developers more time to develop and do a project. And that is crucial to us for a multitude of reasons. Real estate is volatile, I'm gonna use that word, right? You never know what it's gonna do. And in the time that they prepare their plans, if the market falls out and their map is set to expire, we just lost an opportunity to have lots that were available for people to develop. A prime example of that are the lots that are already graded on the hill and ready to go. These lots, many of them have one more extension left before they're dead, and you have to start from scratch. So this gives us the ability to extend them and give them more time to be able to, and give us and them the ability to respond to the market and build more houses and have lots available that are ready for construction. So with that, like I said, it's just housekeeping. We're using verbiage straight from the Subdivision Map Act and gives staff as well as developers and people of the community more flexibility to respond to the housing community. So if you guys have any questions, I'm at your beck and call.
Excellent. So we'll begin with any council comments. Is there any council questions? I mean, do you have anything that you can offer us to change the routine and mundane that we have to do? Or is it just, you're just looking out for the planning commission?
I'm just looking out for the people that matter
Got
to
it,
me.
got it, I understand. No, I mean, this makes perfect sense. This is one of those that makes very clear sense that we keep our projects active and the ability. The 6 years is at our discretion though, too, correct?
100%.
Yeah.
It is our discretion.
That's the important thing is it still our discretion? Is if another project comes along and there's something else that we have to come forth and have a conversation, we still have that discretionary authority.
Yeah, so if you had a project that you felt that there was a substantial change in the community that has, you don't have to give them a six-year extension. You could give them a 1 year or a 2 year. So it's all up to planning commission discretion.
Okay. I'll go ahead and start with Mr. Blades. He's got his fingers twiddling some.
Yes, yeah. So when I was on the planning commission, which by the way, that's fine. They need to go through the mundane stuff because that's how you learn. So I mean, honestly, I mean, you knew a lot, Travis, because you work in the industry. But people on the planning commission, that's no excuse for them. So I have a list of questions, and one of those is if this is causing a lot of extra time for the staff needlessly, that is a good reason for this housekeeping item. Is that?
It does. It causes us to, and I say by us, that is proverbial. It causes Heather to have to write a staff report, say why it's good. With turnover in planning commission, you're giving the same spiel over and over to let them understand why this is important. Because if all of our maps, which were done relatively at the same time, died, we would have no ability to build houses anywhere, right? It would only be on the lots that were created a long time ago, and the maps were finalized. So other than Ridgecrest Heights, if all these maps died, there's no other space you could go build on. So it does. It saves staff reports. It saves time on the phone with developers. The emails that they send us to do that. So it's a time saver for us, and it also gives us more flexibility to respond to.
My next question is the cost to the customer. So I thought I remember what the cost is, but could you
$760.
Say again?
$760.
Okay, to renew the map, right?
Literally
and
just to.
And then there's only 3 extensions, right?
Yeah, there was only 3 extensions back in the day. It was an initial 24 or 36 month term, and then you could get 3 extensions, and that was it.
And the original purpose of that ordinance, if I remember correctly, was a forcing function for folks to be motivated to want to develop within that 12 months, so they wouldn't have to come back and pay the extension.
I can't speak to that because I do not know, and I didn't really dig too deep into what the cause of that ordinance was. I know that our ordinance matched what the Subdivision Map Act said at the time, and essentially that's what we're doing here, and that's really, I could get back to you on what I thought the intent was if I looked into it.
No, I'm not asking, because I thought I remember that being the exact reason. I think I remember asking this question even when I was on the planning commission, is why are we doing this every year? I don't really understand. Well, it's so people will be motivated to pay attention to their parcel map, so now they're trying to get things done instead of just letting them sit for, let's say, 6 years. So I think that's another question I wanted to raise to you, is that now a concern to you or the planning? And it appears not if Heather's bringing this forward.
I'm going to say, I think it's a valid concern. Do I think it's a concern to us? I would say if we had a ton of these maps out there that we had a ability to respond and the planning commission had ever denied an extension, then I would say that I think it would be a little more viable. But because in my time here, in my time on the planning commission, in the 10 years I've been here, I've never heard of a map getting denied an extension. So I think it's more just housekeeping and allows us to give them a longer term if we see it's necessary, like maybe for a 600 lot development, we would give them a longer term. Or, you know what I'm saying? It just gives us more flexibility. So that's kind of my take on it. And I know it probably didn't really answer your question, but.
It's all right. I believe that I understand. Thanks, Travis.
Tom?
Yes, sir. So, I didn't have clarity in the resolution. But anyway, so in the background, we talked about two items. One is the tentative parcel map, the other is the tentative tract map.
Yes, sir.
Right? So, and then we talked about the subdivision map act. So when did we get the subdivision map act? It has been there for a long time?
Yeah, so the Subdivision Map Act was first invoked in 1975. And our ordinances have, since our inception, have pretty much matched the Subdivision Map Act. It's kind of like the gold standard for how things are done and what developers and what cities have to follow. Now, that doesn't mean you have to follow it to a T. We can be more stringent than that, but it's like what we can't be less stringent than.
So all these years, we never thought about implementing the subdivision map then, right?
No,
The
we already have. It's been implemented. We utilize and reference the Subdivision Map Act. We've done that since '83 when our code was first, '83, right? When it was first developed?
Yeah, what they're doing is they're updating the change in the code that happened in 2022.
Exactly.
Because of COVID.
Oh,
Right.
State law extended the periods of time because of the COVID pandemic, because they realized that there would be a delay. So there were further extensions provided in '22. We're just catching up our housekeeping to match the state law.
sure, okay, that makes sense. So what are we requesting in the amendment?
So what we're requesting in the amendment is basically to allow for a 6-year term, up to, not to exceed 6 years, which is going to change it from the 12-month or the 24-month, depending on what type of map it was. So and I'm sorry, I've been surveyor lingo in me. I use parcel map, tract map, subdivision very interchangeably.
Yeah, that's
So
what I
a
heard.
subdivision describes is either, you can do subdivisions in two ways, a parcel map or a tract map.
Okay, so you combine both
I
into that.
combine both and call them a subdivision, and then the difference between a parcel map in general and a tract map is a parcel map is 4 lots or less. A tract map is more than 4.
So even with the amendment, the tentative parcel map initially would be for 24 months,
No, it allows us
No.
to do it up to, but not to exceed 6 years.
6 years. So you want that at a stretch, 6 years.
So we want
So
to
why
be,
not in 2-year increments? I mean,
we still can. We still can. It's just, like I said, sometimes it can take, so you can get the approval of a tentative map, right? And once you have your approved tentative map, now starts the engineering phase. Depending on how big your development is, you could be in the engineering process going back and forth with the water district, with Jim and the treatment plant for the collection system, with my engineering staff for grading, with improvement plans and street grading and storm drain and all that stuff for 24 months. So if you don't even have approved plans for 24 months, now you have 1 year or you don't have time to even start construction on it. So it's just, it really is, like I said, just to give staff and developers a little more flexibility to be able to develop.
so my only concern is to go 6 years at a stretch. What if some codes change, some laws change within the 6 years?
So
How
if-
are we going to implement those things?
So if laws change, we can recondition a project. So conditions are what tell them what they have to do. All this is doing is allowing them to say their map is active, and those are tentative lots. If that's kind of the easiest way for me to explain it to you. So it's basically the piece of paper that says there's a property line here, 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 and here, and this is not one big piece yet. But until that map finals and you get all your improvements in, that map doesn't record as a final map. So we have the ability to recondition. And I mean, there are some things that make it to where you can't. Like if you do a tentative vesting map, that locks your place in time. So obviously on a tentative vesting map, we would not do a 6-year term. You would do a smaller term. But just a tentative map that doesn't lock in your standards and your place in time based on that submission of when it was approved, you could give a longer period of time.
Okay. If you read the item 3 on page 2. Second line, section 105, 126 extension. It says may be extended by planning commission for a period or periods not exceeding a total of 6 years. So is the planning commission going to decide if they can do it for 2 years or 3 years? Is that the intent there?
That is the intent, and I also feel my interpretation of the Subdivision Map Act is that was the intent of the Map Act as well. They wanted to give Planning Commission the ability to extend them longer than a 12-month, but not to exceed that total of 6 years. So there's still an expiration date on them. They can't just extend it, right? So the total still can't be longer than 6 years.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it.
Part of what the planning commission is going to consider is obviously the staff report from our staff and information from the developer. Between those two, they should be able to make a decision on what the appropriate length of that extension should be.
Sure, makes sense.
And even to add on that, staff could come in and say, we recommend a 5-year term with one extension, right? And this planning commission can say, no, we want to make that a 2-year term.
Okay.
So that they don't have to follow a staff recommendation either.
I'm going to jump in here because I've got to counter something that how the resolution reads and what you're saying aren't quite jiving. The resolution amendment indicates that the initial approval still would only be for 24 months. The extension could be for a period for up to not to exceed 6 years. I don't believe that we would be approving at the initial approval for up to those time periods. That's based on Section 2, Amendment 2E. The approval or conditional approval of a tentative parcel map shall be for 24 months. The addition of the time frame is in the extension section of the portion, which would mean that the initial approval would still only be for 24 months, and then any extension request could be extended for up to that period not to exceed 6 years. I'm just making sure that I understand the clarification. I don't believe our planning commission will be, that is correct? Okay.
Yep, you are right. I spoke wrong. You're right. They couldn't approve the original one for 6 years.
That they would
It extended it to a total of 6 years. And I think if I remember right, and I could be wrong, it was 4 before.
Yeah, and on that vein, that we've agreed that it's 24 months up front. They can
Yes.
they can apply for the
Yes.
extension. Why would we then still have the line directly below that, which I would like to question, which is upon written application, a time extension not exceeding 12 months may be granted by the planning commission? I mean, because if you have 24 months and your maximum period is 6 years, why would it not be upon written application, a time extension not exceeding 48 months may be granted?
You know what? That is a great question, and one I'm going to have to ask Paul about.
Bottom of page 1, Martin.
Because if the total period cannot exceed 6 years and your initial is 24 months, then your remaining clock time is 48 months. But you have a sentence that contradicts the extension directly in the amendment.
Yeah, I don't know. Are you
Section, page 1, section 2E, second sentence,
Absolutely.
in comparison to section 3, extension, which is what they're adding.
We will go ahead and change that to 48.
For the purpose of the first reading?
For the purpose of the first reading, I will
And we
do some more research,
So
and then
will I.
if that needs to be changed for the second reading, we'll advise the council at the next meeting.
Yeah, I still think it's perfectly reasonable. I'm just clarifying the terminology as.
I don't know if the new law off the top of my head, and my partner prepared this, that was working with Heather on it, because I was on vacation. I don't know if the new law limits the extensions to 12 months, so you can get
Four extensions of 12
four
months.
extensions of 12 months, or if you
Understood.
can do it all at the same time. So let's put 48 in, and if that isn't the state of the law, we'll change it at the second reading.
And we'll
next
clarify it
meeting.
at the second
Right.
reading. Okay, that's perfectly reasonable for me. Okay. I'll go to ask Doc, you had any other questions?
No, that was exactly what I was having a little trouble with, was determining if it was going to be a 2-year, approval, and then it wasn't real clear to me as far as was it going to be a extension of, 2 years, 3 years, or yeah, so I think it's pretty clear at this point now that it would be approvals of 24 months and extensions of
Up to
24,
48,
up to
but-
48 more months, or,
but-
2 extensions, which would include,
But that doesn't make sense to me either, because in our staff report, we have that currently it allows a 36-month first one and a 36-month and 12-month increments. So I'm gonna have to do some more research to make sure the second reading is right.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. And Skip?
No.
No. Okay.
Can we even move forward with the first reading?
Minor changes in the language of the ordinance can be done during the second reading,
Just so long as
especially when it's identified.
just so long as we understand the intent.
Right, yep. We will insert the maximum permitted by state law.
So I had a kind of a question with that. Does that do we even need to have the specific dates, like 24, 48 months, where on page 1 it states that whereas the subdivision map act, 66463.5 authorizes the planning commission to approve or conditionally approve extensions of tentative parcel maps and tentative tract maps for a period not to exceed 6 years.
It's
that
not
seems
clear.
pretty-
There is some ambiguity, so we need to go back and.
Well, that just
but
leaves
what
it
you-
open if you wanted to approve it for 1 year or 2 years or 3 years.
So what you're saying, Scott, is why not just take those out and then just let the discretion be to the planning commission?
That's why I'm saying that does do that in that in that paragraph, because it just says that extensions of tentative parcel maps and tentative tract maps for a period not to exceed 6 years. So it's basically saying, once you have the initial approval, they could approve it for 1 year, or they could approve it for 2 years, 3 years, depending on what kind of an agreement that the builder and the planning commission comes to, says, if he says, I need 1 year, I need 3 years, he's got up to 6 years.
To get it done, yeah.
And
I see what you're saying, but I think we should probably stick to matching what the subdivision map act says, just because that is the gold standard.
Okay.
My opinion, but I do see your point.
Do we have to?
It just doesn't.
I forget how the verbiage reads. You do not have to match it to a T, but go ahead.
May I, Mayor? Yeah. I have a recommendation. The 2 maps that are of concern don't expire until September or January of 2024. I would propose that we continue the first reading to
Until
the
the
next
next meeting.
The next meeting, we'll clean this up.
Why don't we clean it up and bring it back?
And bring it back.
I got a feeling that's what, I got a feeling there's at least 2 council members that are feeling a little bit that way too. I had a feeling that was where we're headed, trust me. I'm with you, Martin. I was reading the room too. Ricka would like to chime.
I would like to add also, in response to Mr. Heyman's comment about the whereases, the whereases are not what's being changed in the code, it's the amendment that's being added.
Right.
So this is the wording that has to say it down at the amendment, because that's what's
Right.
actually going in the code. So the fact that it says it up here would not change the code.
Wouldn't change it.
Okay.
Because it's actually the amendment part where you can see where we're adding.
And
That's where it has to state it.
So after this fun discussion in which we are going to, I believe, I will just look for head nods. Is there a consensus just to go ahead and continue the item until a future meeting for a little bit clearer clarification? Is that a general consensus amongst the council? So then I have to get my moment, okay? And that is that on page 3, Section 4, item H, I think there's a spelling error. I'm just sorry, I just have to do it. Tentative T-map, I don't know what a T-map is, so.
That should be tracked. That should be tracked. Do you know what's really funny? I read all of this multiple times.
I don't know if
And
I
I
should be
did-
happy about that or
And I did
disappointed
not,
by
because
that.
my mind, you know how your mind reads what you want it to say?
Yep.
I read right through that.
I'm just teasing. I'm trying to make it light because, again, for the public that's watching or hearing, we do take reading these things seriously and to try and do the best for the community at all times. And when there's questions, then we'll stop and have a conversation.
Well, yeah, we do. So I had a question that I don't think, and I was gonna, maybe Martin, if you could answer this. Do we have to follow this, the act to a T? Does our ordinance have to match the act to a T?
It does not. We have some various discretion that we can exercise. I think that staff, we need to provide the minimal protections that are provided by the state law. So when the state law says that you can extend the map up to 6 years, that needs to be provided with the ability to exercise discretion. It's not mandatory. In other words, the Planning Commission can exercise that discretion. But we will address the number of things that have been identified and make sure that we are clear. I apologize. This was not.
You're fine.
No apologies necessary at all, sir. Matter of fact, what I was going to say is, so Heyman brought up a good point about maybe taking, and Travis, not contradicted, but you countered Mr. Heyman's point with, no, I think we need to follow the act and have those spans of time in there. With what I believe what Scott was saying is why the act says 6 years, make it 6 years, and give that discretion to the Planning Commission. Is that a summary?
Well, just for simplicity.
Yeah. So then that's my question was then, is there a real compelling answer to have those increments in there, and is it legal, and?
The 24-month increment and the 12-month increment, and the 6, are all those increments necessary, or would it be more effective, as Doc mentioned? Here's the amendment, says, the Planning Commission may add its discretion.
Because then it ultimately falls back on the staff. Staff's just making a recommendation for whatever it's going to be, and then the Planning Commission's going to go approve it.
Doesn't have to.
Okay, and we'll revisit it.
Yeah, when you leave out the increments, then you don't give kind of the guidance of what the increments can be. Otherwise, the developer's going to come in and push for the full amount. And there's going to be no guidance in there saying, 24 months or, 6, full 6 years, so, yeah.
Roger that.
Okay.
It does provide some, I'll say, incentive for the developers to move forward. Yeah.
And I like how the numbers fall, kind of, with the 6 years, 24 months seems to be kind of a nice, easy, covers the 1 year guys, covers the 2 year, and breaks it up into, you got a couple extensions, and
Yep.
you're good.
I agree.
I understand.
Martin,
I think.
Martin, with us continuing this item, do I need to call for public comment?
No, because no action is being taken by the council other than continuing it.
Yeah.
But if there is public comment, we're here, might as well.
Yeah,
find out.
I was going to say, I was going to call. Is there any public comment from the floor in regards to the ordinance? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move forward. We're going to continue this item to a future meeting. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on with our next item. Skip, I apologize. I didn't skip you over. Did you have anything? Good. We're good? Okay, my apologies, sir.
Eric,
I'm not shy. I'll just grab my
Cool.
microphone and
I
talk
just-
when I'm ready, but no.
I just have a routine where we'll either go left or right and make sure that I've covered everyone. Next item is on our agenda is our committee reports. Our city org committee did not meet on the 2nd. We'll be meeting in April. And then the next is our Parks, Recreation, and Quality of Life Committee. Are you going to discuss that in your city manager report, Mr. Strand, or would you like for us to cover it here? The town hall?
Yeah, I can cover the town hall.
Okay. So we did not have a normal Parks and Recreation Quality of Life meeting. We had a pool town hall that I will allow City Manager Strand to provide report on in his report. Our next regular meeting will be the first Tuesday in April, and we would encourage, now is the time, people, if you want to get involved in the idea and the creation and everything that's going on in our wonderful parks and community, now is the time to get involved, and ideas are welcomed. But if you have a great idea and you keep it to yourself, it will only materialize in your own head.
I heard that.
Next is economic development.
Yeah. We did meet on the 8th. I have a few things. Mojave View Apartments are opening soon, but I don't have a direct date. We just know soon. Frosty Peaks and Habit should be breaking ground soon. I'm gonna keep you.
Isn't Frosty Peaks just building next door to Chipotle?
Yeah.
So it's not breaking ground, it's just building into the space. I thought Habit's actually
Sure.
a new building, is it not?
Right. But
Sorry,
I
I was just asking.
No, that's good. I hesitate to ever give dates. I learned a lesson from the city manager a long time ago. Nothing until you see permits pulled. Nothing's in stone.
So you see dirt.
Let's see. We did bring up that there was something that's been brought up a few times, and maybe it's. I don't know if it needs to be discussed at this level, but it's certainly worth casting your way. And that is the idea of the city conducting their own feasibility study for businesses coming into town. Now, we would hope that new businesses would do their own, but there's pitfalls to that. I'm not going to dig too far into it. I'm just going to say it's been brought up by multiple different entities, and now it's came up at least twice at our economic development meeting. And so I'm just bouncing it off you guys. Nothing to take action on, but certainly something to think about.
So that's, you're, to get the rough sketch.
Sure.
You're talking about us spending a little bit of general fund money, getting a consultant to actually design and create the feasibility study that we would then be able to hand to a potential prospective business that was coming into the community.
Sure, or the other way.
They could buy it off of us or whatever.
Or the other way around. We have somebody propose to us, they want to come in, they've done their own study, and they say, hey, we're good for another, you name the business. And we come back to them and say, look, we did our own feasibility study, and not going to work, pal. So I'm not trying to question the market or upset the apple cart so much here, but it's been brought up. It's just worth considering. Scott?
Well, just say, but it would or would not impact their ability to make a decision to.
I think it would directly impact. There's other communities that do this sort of. They have a feasibility study, and I'm sure there's avenues we could do. And I think this would cause a lot of work on our staff to go back and have to. I'm guessing that we have to have ordinances in place. I don't think this is as simple as let's just go out and do a study through HDL or anybody else.
So we're saying that we could do a feasibility study and then put the kibosh on a.
Potentially, yes.
On a project that did
On
not
a private
fit with our
business
community.
that's.
Yes. And now, so here's the concern, since we're discussing
Okay.
it, and this is, I can see both sides of the story. The concern is businesses getting ahead of themselves and oversaturating our market, and then now we see down the road either A, somebody has flooded the market because of their capital, and now they can monopolize it, so to speak, or now that's that many businesses in town with just empty buildings sitting around the place, like we see all over Ridgecrest already. Now, I do understand when you flip the coin over, we're in a capitalist market. If you want to move in and you screw up, sure. But like we always talk about, we're trying to plan Ridgecrest for the next 50 to 100 years. There's things we want to think about. There are communities who plan their communities in this way. So I am not proposing either one way or the other, but it has been proposed to me by several different individuals.
Interesting.
But
Thank
it
you.
sounds like something that if economic development continues discussing, debating, it sounds like this is something that may come from the committee to the council at a future date as a recommendation.
If we think there's any traction, but I think the real deal is, let's just say there is a study. The staff may decide that, you know what I mean?
Well, I think we have just a little issue, because one, businesses are based upon zoning.
Sure.
And based upon our business licenses, what businesses are permissible within our community. If we have a ordinance that allows a coffee shop as a business to go in a certain area that's zoned for commercial business, I think it'd be very difficult for us to tell somebody you can't open up another coffee shop. I mean, that would.
Sure. Yep, I get that. And that's what I meant. What I meant was I fully understand that this would be some work on the staff. Ordinances have to be changed. I mean, right now, I think most communities control what goes where by zoning. So.
And I would recommend that if we are going to get in depth into this discussion, that we agendize it as a discussion.
Agreed,
item.
and that's what I said, is if this was gonna be something that would be
We're
larger,
getting- yeah.
it would come as a recommendation out of economic
But
development.
it did need to be mentioned.
Yeah,
You guys need to
fine.
hear it
Oh,
because
yeah.
it's coming up over and over.
That's interesting.
I think that was the big ticket items, unless you had something else, Solomon.
We talked about moving the meeting to first Monday.
That we did. That was the biggest ticket item that I should have mentioned. My apologies. We talked about moving to the first Monday of the month. So our next meeting would be the 3rd of April. And so really it's more of a talking to you guys, making sure everybody's okay with it, and then and making sure Rick is okay with it.
Rika is okay.
Okay. You guys are all right with
Yeah,
that?
if your committee and staff is supportive, then fine.
Yeah, there's just a lot of conflicts with everybody's schedule, and then
Yeah, lot
just-
going on Wednesdays.
yeah,
Is this just for the next meeting? You're changing it to?
indefinitely.
Oh, I see. You can do that. Sheesh.
You can,
Yeah, the
indeed.
committee can move its meeting date.
So it's gonna be the first.
The first Monday of the month at like 5:15 or 5:30, whatever is.
15, she said.
Yep. Okay.
Okay.
They are not set by council, okay.
No, they are not.
They're set by the committee, right?
Set by the committee.
They're set by committee.
We just want to make sure you guys are all aware of it, and then the staff, and that.
Yeah,
Rick
I
was-
looked at the calendar and we're good.
I figured you're on top of it.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Next was Finance Committee. Finance Committee met last night. Great meeting. Councilman Heyman was unable to attend. Councilman Rajaratnam was our sit-in. We talked a little bit about sales tax return and without trying to go too long, but I get a minute or two to offer some explanation. What we had as our biggest discussion point was understanding sales tax revenues, that people just don't quite understand how the sales tax revenues work for our community on certain types of purchases. And the conversation that came out of it was doing a larger conversation at a future date, really trying to make sure that citizens have an understanding that on April 1st, your tax rate will become 9.25%. That is 1% for Measure V and 1% for Measure P, in addition to the state 7.25%. The 7.25% is then divided up amongst the state, counties, and cities. However, the portion of sales tax collected under that header is dependent upon the location of distribution for the purchase for online purchases or for some larger ticket items. So for example, if you buy a $10,000 billiard table through Amazon.com, and the sales tax on that billiard table comes out to be $925, I can tell you without question that the city of Ridgecrest will receive $100 for Measure P and $100 for Measure V, but the remainder of that 7.25% will be divided up amongst the state, county, and the city on which the Amazon product distributed from. And so what that means
Are you talking
is,
about the Wayfair?
this is the Wayfair decision. We can go into a larger discussion. I'm just telling you what we talked about. I'm not going far, otherwise I'll get Martin will slap my hand. Okay? This is what we talked about, so I can just cover it from that basis, is we're gonna come out with some more information to better explain this to citizenship so they understand. The key element to understand here is this is why local tax measures are so critical to ensuring our continued revenue and income flow. Because while the community, and hey, my wife during Christmas season had a blast. And, we had an incredible amount of Measure V revenue in the month of December, okay? And it was great. But our regular sales tax was substantially less than what it would have been. And I'm telling you that effect is called Amazon.com. Is because the sales tax that was collected on the state side of that 7.25% went to the distribution city and not to the not to the city of of delivery, San Bernardino or other. And so it's just important to understand this, and that's what we were talking about because we were having a discussion about the variance in Delta V changes in sales tax revenue over Measure V sales tax revenue. And that's important to understand because now Measure P sales tax revenue will have the same strength that Measure V does, and that comes from the strength of having local guaranteed tax measures that only go to a singular source, aka the city of Ridgecrest.
And if the same pool table was purchased in a store in Ridgecrest,
then we would guarantee to get it.
Yeah, you would get it, right.
Yeah, because then that's the point of purchase.
That doesn't matter where it came from, where it would have been. But
Not from the distributor to the reseller,
Right.
but from the reseller to the final purchaser. That's at point of purchase. But with online, it then comes into play to the distribution center. It's called the Wayfair decision. It's something that we've been dealing with on the state level. It's a state advocacy issue, but it's something that just doesn't make a lot of common sense until you kind of draw it in a diagram. If you kind of imagine where the truck's going with the sales tax, then it starts to make a little more sense. And all we did in the end part of this conversation is we have discussed at Finance bringing this back either at Finance for another conversation that we would either do a small video or something. We think that educating the public in regards to how their sales tax dollars actually work is something that's important understanding, especially in light of the faith provided to our citizens through Measure P. So that was what came up. The other thing we talked about was there were discussions about SVB, Silicon Valley Bank, and what the city's total potential uninsured deposit risks were, and what actions are taken on the regular in order to limit our relative risk by institution. And then we had another greater discussion in regards to the investment portfolio, how it's structured, what its guarantees are, what exposures do we potentially have through the custodian. So SVB was something that was kind of peppered into the conversation about just city exposure risks, and the determination in the conversations was that the city remains very minimally exposed to any bank failures. First, our deposits are held by a very trusted local institution in Alta One, and then through LAFCO, which is a state-run organization. And then secondarily, we've diversified our portfolio in investments in ways that we are not solely in single buckets. So through diversification and through good management, I think we're in very good position from an exposure perspective. That's just for the citizens to know. It's something that is on people's heartstrings, that starts. So might as well make sure we talked about that. And overall, the overall message is we are still actually exceeding budgetary expectations in all categories with the exception of property tax, oddly enough, which is the only one that's slightly below budgetary expectations. And that may simply be people that didn't choose to make the first half payment versus the second half payment. And I will call that a little too early to call. And that's all from finance, unless you have anything to add. I cover everything? Okay. No meeting for RCVB or infrastructure. Other committees, boards, or commissions? Anybody? Then I'll just go ahead and, I want to thank Megan McKenzie and Isabel. We've had a couple quick meetings here over the last week. I had the pleasure of presenting at our Chamber of Commerce yesterday in regards to the progress that's being made with the pool, and they were able to help me get that organized. Thank you. And then we hosted the Eastern Current Economic Alliance the week before. And that's a consortium group that comes in with representatives from Tehachapi, from Boron, Rosemont, all of our Eastern Current communities. And it's always a great opportunity to hear what our other sister and brother communities are doing, as well as them getting a chance to see, hear, taste, touch what Ridgecrest is doing. We were able to share with them the continued progress we're making on water, as well as, more importantly, just all of the revitalization work that we're actively doing for our community through both America's Rescue Plan, through Measure V, through Measure P, and where our long-term plans are for continuing to build and revitalize our community. I want to throw a quick shout out again to the staff of the city of Tehachapi, who's been a great partner in communicating and offering ideas and ways to continue to expand the communication reach of our community. And I said it at the chamber, and I've said it before, our goal remains to continue to communicate with our citizens, and I think the proof is positive in all the things that we're seeing coming back from survey results to Night on Balsam, that communication is reaching you. If you don't feel like you've got communication or you have a question, I guarantee you any one of the 5 members of this council will be happy to address you or talk to you or take any question, try to see if we can find an answer for you, and we appreciate that. City manager report.
Yes, thank you. We did our first new pool town hall meeting in conjunction with the Quality of Life meeting on March 7th. We had our 2 design consultants, architects up here that assisted us running the meeting. We had approximately between 30 and 40 individuals that participated in providing input to the community on what the community sees the needs of the pool, what type pools they're looking at, what features we may have. As you can see, we have several boards that are still posted out in the lobby that were done by the participants, either how they pushed the boards and how they wanted the property, the pools laid out on the current property structure. So with that information, as well as the previous information we have from the SPP and the surveys, the design groups going back, they're going to come up with a concept drawing that then they're going to bring back to staff. We'll have another town hall meeting next month to be able to discuss the next phase of the concept drawing and where we're going to go. So we're hoping that we could have this pool designed and then move on to the staff portion where we work with the architects on the more finer details of the pool, such as the solar. Right now I'm working with a local solar company to help secure a permit, so we don't lose out on credits if we decide to put solar on the pool during the build. We have until April 15th to be able to get that paperwork in. So that local company is working with our architect to get the information to file the application with SCE. So we're hoping it'll be in plan check by July and under construction either November, December, January of this year, early next year. So it's moving along quite quickly. We will make a concerted effort to get to the public the next town hall so we can continue to have this input from the community, which I think is is very important. And of course, Mr. Mary did a great job on Tuesday at the chamber, going over, where we're at on the pool and what happened at the town hall. So I think we have a lot of information from the public. And I think that we're going to build a pool.
We're going to build a pool. We're going swimming.
Yep, we're going to build a pool.
We're going swimming.
And we also had our meeting today with staff from the Ridgecrest Visitors Bureau, Chamber, and a couple of local businesses to discuss our next night on Balsam Street. We're looking at a tentative date of May 19th.
Very good.
So we'll keep you posted on that. But I think we're going to meet again in about 2 weeks.
We need a good catchphrase because Night on Balsam, if it was August, we could do hot August nights. So we could come up with something for May. Because we won't have May showers by then, hopefully.
Well, we're looking at bringing,
I'm just playing.
some additional activities out there this time, so we'll see how it works. I mean, the group is fairly creative, and so we'll see how it goes.
Thank you,
That's all I
sir.
have. Yep.
Okay, next is our future agenda items. Does any council member have any future agenda items they would like placed? Hearing none, we'll go to mayor and council comments. Kyle, I'm gonna let you be the first off today.
No comments.
No comment.
Uh-oh, Doc's reaching.
So the Respect for Law dinner is on March 25th and starts at 5:30. Social hour, the buffet dinner at 6 and program at 7. So looking forward to that.
I think it was during that last agenda item, the one about track maps and stuff, that I was musing about something completely different. Being a newbie up here, I guess I'm most sensitive to the folks out there watching on their computers. Rika, is there a way on your machine to tell how many people may still be watching? 12 people. God bless you, you're still there. And it occurred to me that your best.
That was my next question, is how many do you think we could name of the 12?
It's all our family members.
The best council person might be, ideally, a local barber or perhaps a local cosmetologist, somebody who straps one person after another onto the chair, throws that towel over them and starts trimming their hair and chatting about the local scene, one after another. I feel sometimes my shop is like that, though a noisy metal shop isn't the best venue. I've got walk-ins all the time, nice people, and I enjoy chatting with them. And I find out what's on their minds, and I wonder often what committee to refer them to. If you're just jumping into this drama, comedy drama perhaps, called the City Council, and there's episodes that have gone before that you haven't seen, the business of committees can be intimidating. It was to me. There's a handful of standing committees. I don't know where they came from. I got a feeling they evolved, and not all together. Certainly their names didn't come in. And each councilman shoulders the load of belonging to 2 different committees because they meet once a month. It's, until now, organized times. And I'll talk to the committees that I'm on. I call one the trash committee and the other the pool committee. And the trash committee meets on the first Thursday of each month at 5:30 here. Though I think it's a less formal venue than what you're seeing right now. I got a feeling the councilman perhaps would deliberately not wear a tie. And also on another committee I'm involved with is the the Quality of Life Committee, which I call the Pool Committee. So I'm on what I'll call two active committees, the Trash Committee and the Pool Committee. And this week, trash came up a lot in my shop, and I don't know how wide a bandwidth that issue is for the committee. It's not strictly the delivery, the truck coming by and emptying your cans, and the uncertainty associated with that little organic can. People had something to say. Mostly there were comments that were critical of, for one thing, the cardboard dumpster that was visibly available to people. How would you characterize the location that was last at?
That was on Ridgecrest Boulevard, and it's now at the Waste Management Building out on County Line Road.
It is.
It is out there.
Far too far away, I'm told. Dang it. Do you have to, the question came up, do you have to be in the city
No, sir.
to
Anybody
utilize
can
that?
use that.
No. And other questions. I encourage people who walk in with any questions about trash to go to the trash committee meeting. And I'd be sure and tell them when and where. I'll have little cards made for each committee. But I'm now discouraged from doing that when I see how easy it is to change the date the committee normally meets.
Skip, we have a flyer that I can give you that you can take copies to your office that has the date and the time and the secretary of everybody on every committee that you can just hand out. And we'll get that to you, and then also you can always refer them to me. They can email me, they can call me, you can, and I can get you information and get you in contact with whichever committee you want.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
I'll take a short stack.
Not to
I
be
will get
critical, in 2 years that or 2.5 years that I've sat up here, this is the first time I've seen the committee move a date.
Oh.
Yeah.
So it's not a common practice. It's something where, once we discover that there is a consistent challenge with a date, and in this case, Wednesdays, because there's 4 Wednesdays, typically the 4 Wednesdays a month, and 2 of them are already occupied for our council members here at the dais. I think that they were having challenges with it being on a Wednesday and how it was eating up that specific day of the month.
And Bernie started coaching.
Yeah, and there were some other contradictory challenges that, it's the first time I've seen it change in 2 years.
The names and numbers of committees can be intimidating. Don't give up trying to learn them. I'm still trying. I don't know the bandwidth of each committee or what it would take to give birth to a new committee. I've heard some comments today that would make me think maybe we need a whole new committee for that. I don't know. Who's got the bodies for a whole new committee, for goodness sakes? That's all I had to say. I hope it wasn't too much. It was a meandering stream of consciousness.
Your comments are always welcome, Skip. You should know that. We love them. I only have a couple final comments for the evening. First, I want to once again invite anybody who wants to join our Cub Scouts and our Boy Scouts picking up trash Saturday. This coming Saturday, the 18th, from 9 until 12. Staging area will be in the Zinn Bowl parking lot. Thank you to our city staff. Megan, I feel like I say Megan 4 times a meeting, telling her thank you, but for getting this organized and getting it out there. Super cool. This is inspiring some other things. On March 21st, is that right? I think I have the date right. Caltrans is coming and doing another event with us in the community, and as part of their community cleanup days. 25th? No, they're coming for the press event is on the 21st, correct? Yes. I thought I had that date right. It's the 21st. That's the Tuesday. And then there's cleanups on the 25th. And on top of that, we've been reached out to by at least 2 other community groups and 1 other business group. And I found out just recently that our local Rotary Club did an Adopt a Highway for a portion of Highway 178. When we come together to work to build a greater community, we will all gain from it. I thank each one of these community groups for their willingness to get involved. Hey, everyone out there who wanted to tell me, hey, this trash thing is going to cause everything to blow all over the ground, come on down. Would love to help you. We'd love to have your help from 9 until 12, picking it up off the ground, anything that's blown in the first couple months while we got this thing in line and we're making progress. On the trash angle, I just want to make sure that I have done what I think is important due diligence for this council, and that is to alert that everybody who may be watching this broadcast, who may not be a citizen of the city of Ridgecrest, but may be part of our greater Ridgecrest community and live in county or outer line areas, I do strongly encourage you to comment or to communicate with the county about your trash service and the changes that are coming. If you do not, have not, or are not aware of what is coming, I encourage you to be educated. They do have changes in your trash service that will be coming on July 1st that will have property tax implications for our county residents. The city of Ridgecrest made the conscious decision to not put it on the property tax roll. That was a specific request of our citizens, and we maintained that. Unfortunately, the county chose a different direction, and I just would encourage you to educate yourself on what those changes would be. Next is I want to thank our city staff, in addition to the congressional offices of Congressman Kiley, Albernolte, Valadeo, Garcia, and of course our very own Congressman Kevin McCarthy. I got a chance to visit with all of them while I was in Washington, D.C. last week. Or I guess now it's 2 weeks. It feels like it was last week, but while I wasn't at the last council meeting, these are great advocacy trips, and they continue to hear from our city that we are working towards a better community to solve our issues and to build the type of Ridgecrest we all want. They were very excited to see the continued progress we've made on our water issues and how we have continued to advance those issues positively. And most importantly, is they continue to be very excited to hear about what we're doing to actually address our citizens' concerns and to take these opportunities to revitalize and rebuild Ridgecrest after the earthquakes. They put a large investment into this community through the rebuilding of the base, and they want to see our community, that base, and the entire eastern Kern area thrive, especially Ridgecrest. So thank you to each of them. Congressman McCarthy, again, special thanks. He gave us an incredible tour and an opportunity to see the Speaker's office, and there's nothing more special than seeing our representatives working for us, but also working for our nation. With that same, I want to take a moment for one of our state representatives, State Assemblyman Vince Fong. I want to congratulate him on behalf of the city of Ridgecrest. Vince got married to Amanda over the weekend, last weekend. Congratulations on your nuptials, and we wish you the very best, and thank you for your continued service and representation of the city of Ridgecrest. And then finally, I just want to again remind everyone how incredible it is to be part of this community where we've had all kinds of challenges, and we certainly have had some recent ones over the past couple of years with drought and rain and everything else. And like all good things, God delivers. And if we haven't seen that this year, hopefully we'll see it in the coming years in our recharge and in our continued efforts to make this the best community. So my simple words are thank God for water, thank God for snowpack, and for everyone else, I hope to see you at Lake Isabella in the fall. With that, have a great evening, and we'll see you the first week of April.